I'll cut that last part out.
Yeah, let's get into it. And then throw in a salute.
Yeah.
Good. Hey, this is Brandon. I'm the Innovation and Strategy Manager up in Eagle County, Colorado. And welcome to this week's Intentionally Left Blank.
Hey everyone, it's Lilo. Yeah, I'm super pumped for today's episode. We're going to be chatting with Jessica Greene, who spent 2 years on my team as our program administrator, doing just super incredible things before going to her new role at the Department of Human Services. So super excited to talk to her. So, let's get into it. Jessica, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to Brandon and I today about what you're doing. So for those folks just watching this and who don't know who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. My name is Jessica Greene. I'm the Learning, Engagement, and Development Team Manager at the Colorado Department of Human Services. On my team, we joke that we're the people who help people, but truly our job is to support the employees at the Department of Human Services help Coloradans thrive. And so me and my team, we work on the entire employee life cycle. So we're in charge of new employee onboarding. We're in charge of performance management and their professional development, their career pathing. And then we're also in charge of their exit interview. Why'd you leave CDHS? So our focus is just helping employees live their best life within the organization.
That's so cool. And you get to capture every single employee that comes through Human Services in their entire career life cycle. And so I bet you get a lot of really amazing insights. And I'm so excited because of the work that you had done, at the state of Colorado and the Google team, taking that kind of approach and innovation and really kind of rethinking back office and how to provide support. What are you working on now that you're excited about? That's really cool.
Yeah, one of our biggest initiatives that I'm the most excited about is our career pathing initiative. So we actually just hired a career pathing program manager, and this person's job is just to help folks at the organization career path. So if you work in dining services, what does your career path look like? Can we get you the skills to go into the work you want to do, whether that's IT or whether that's further up the organization or facility, whatever that looks like. So that's one of the initiatives I'm really excited about because it helps us retain the employees that we have. Like, we have a lot of really great employees. We just have to help them develop the skills and figure out what they want to do next. And CDHS is such a large organization. We have plenty of places for people to go. We just have to help them get there.
So in terms of kind of switching gears a little bit, if you had your training and development telescope with you, what do you see down the road, maybe 5, even 10 years down the road for your team and for HR as a whole?
One of the trends we've been seeing is this constant need to reskill or upskill. So things are constantly changing. I mean, when you're working in technology, Lilo, you know this, Brandon, you also know this, especially in government, whether that's technology, whether that's turnover at the governor's level or below that, things are constantly changing. And so what we're looking at is how do we help people reskill or upskill or pivot to meet the needs of that new work?
I'd be curious too, with the upskilling, is there anything that you're doing in terms of tracking those? Is there anything new about the way you're collecting that information and providing those paths?
Yeah, that's a great question. So eventually, in our dream state,
yeah,
we'd like to look at all of the position descriptions for all of our employees and then figure out where skills overlap. So if I'm working as a program assistant, those are actually very similar skills to someone working in business technology. And how do we get them there? I think a lot of times what bars employees from searching for their next thing is just knowing what's available and knowing what skills are required. So if we can somehow magically, and when I say magic, I mean with technology, read all of our position descriptions and associate skills with them and then say, hey, these are the paths your skills
yes.
Let's job shadow. Let's talk about going there. And if we can just have that any employee can get on and use and say, hey, I'm looking for my next spot. Where do I want to grow to? That'd be amazing. That would be a game changer for retention.
Yeah.
Good people in the organization.
That's magic. Yeah, if you can do that, it just becomes so much more flexible. So, I mean, maybe just a follow-up. If you've already started on that kind of path and identifying those skills and stuff like that, are you noticing any trends or gap areas that surprised you? Or what has been eye-opening about starting this process that maybe you didn't know before you got into it?
Yeah, so right now we're actually conducting a needs assessment to figure out exactly that. What are our gaps? Research is showing that gaps are really in the soft skills. So how do I manage someone virtually? How do I have tough conversations? How do I strategically plan? Those things that we know that like artificial intelligence and workflows, the things that we know that they can't tackle, that's where the gaps are. Like, how do I manage people are really some of the gaps that we're seeing. Especially in middle management. Like when you have your frontline employee and you have the vision up here, how do our middle managers really communicate and support their employees is one of the gaps we've been noticing.
I think that's super helpful though, to people that are watching, because we all know it intuitively. The fact that you're actually gathering data around the lack of soft skills, and that now that's even more of a challenge when we all went remote. I mean, you pointed out crucial conversations. Dude, you can't do those on a meet like that. I mean, it's really hard to convey the same empathy and be direct. And two, the overlapping, I think that is genius. And there's been a lot of people that have tried to do it and they always give up. Because they find the skills, it becomes too generic, and then all of a sudden it just becomes another KSA that goes into a thing. So I think it's really interesting that you all are moving in that, but with an intent to actually help people move, not just gathering for this. I think sometimes it comes up when you're trying to find people skills, like comms doesn't want to do graphic design. Who else in here has graphic design? But it's short term. It's not long-term career path development. I think that's what's really changed. That's what's really different, at least about what you were talking about. I find that really exciting.
Oh yeah, and it's the lift is huge, right? Like we have 5,500 employees at CDHS, and the problem is, the real challenge we're running into is not everyone agrees on what skills does a training specialist need. So we have these classifications. What skills does a training specialist need? Like, what does that mean to you, right? And it's different if I'm working in a facility versus training a soft skill. And so that's where we're really finding the challenge, is that the skills for each of these positions, like a PA, it can vary. To your point, our PAs could be doing, our program assistants, could be doing a range of things that require different skills. So that's really, we're trying to hammer down, get generic enough that it fits all the different positions, but not so generic as to be meaningless at some point. Like communication. Yes, you are a human being. You need to be able to communicate with one another. All positions need that. What about this position? What skill do you need in communication?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you finding it hard to come up? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, is that almost the first challenge, is coming up with just the common language? I mean, you almost have to establish. Yeah, it's like, I think that would be a real struggle, just to do a definitions list before, so that you can actually, because I bet you find yourself talking past each other sometimes. You assume communication, somebody assumes, oh, that means marketing, and no, those are two different things. They can't talk.
Yeah. If you even go back a step, it's like, why are we doing this? I have good people. I don't want to lose them. Why are we even having this conversation? Why do I have to match the skills in my position to the skills from another position? So there's a whole nother layer of like, if we move we're before the how, we get, if we're talking about change at the why, the awareness or the desire to change.
Is there resistance at all from like I can see where there's a territory. I got to defend my territory. If I let my people identify skills, maybe they're going to get plucked. Or have you seen a sense of contributing to the greater good?
I've seen both. So our organization is so large that we run the gamut. I've seen talent hoarding, but I've also seen people just really open up to that idea. Like, yeah, this is a great person. And if they don't end up here, I want them to end up at CDHS or the wider state. Like, if we really get this right, We could export this to the entire state. There are 35,000 positions. We could keep really good people for a really long time if they just knew what was available to them and we provided them the resources to grow and to develop. That's what employees are looking for. It's like their number one thing they look for in a job is, can I grow? Can I develop? Can I move up? We have 35,000 jobs. Yes, you can move up. Please.
Yes.
17 agencies, like, please, yes, stay here.
So, yeah, I mean, Jessica's got such a technical background that I think it's really interesting to get her perspective as she's moved into kind of that training environment. And she's bringing those skills in, but I think she's also bringing a bit of an innovation slant to it that I thought came out really interesting when she was talking about the programs. I mean, I think the first thing is the fact that Jessica and her team are rethinking a typical back office operation and really capitalizing on the opportunity to do, employee out processing, employee life cycle, and really intercept those innovation ideas kind of throughout that life cycle. I just think with her background and unique approach on that, I think it's going to be fascinating to see where that kind of process, what that can turn into in terms of knowledge transfer, knowledge retention, stuff like that. I think the second thing that really jumped out at me, we're all talking about upskilling. Mm-hmm. But when she was talking about upskilling, I think she was doing something that's a little slightly different flavor than we normally think about it. We normally, at least my experience with identification of skill sets and then identifying upskilling opportunities is really, it often turns into almost like a short-term grab where, somebody who works in finance also happens to be a graphic design person that can be brought in on a project and everybody wins. I think she was looking at it more holistically, and I'm really curious to see what Human Services at the state does with that, because they're thinking about really the long term, placement, getting people in the right positions where they're functional. And I think that's really exciting from a leadership perspective. I would say the third thing, again, she touched on something that I think we all intuitively know, but I hadn't really thought about the long-term effects of it here. And that was on the emphasis on soft skills, when managers have to have crucial conversations with their employees, or even giving words of encouragement. Meet and all these video conferencing tools are awesome in that they can bring us together from great distances. But there is something missing in that direct human to human conversation, and how do we kind of overcome that? And so I think it's really interesting that her team is focusing on the soft skills development, looking over the horizon at the new way in which we're working, which is largely remote based.
Yeah, my three things were, the future of work, right? So it's getting those people to the skill sets or even the areas of interest that they are probably more passionate at, because I think most folks get into government at a level that they probably weren't anticipating to join government at, and so it's kind of it's almost like a foot in the door sometimes, and they want to move up or around. So being able to provide those folks with that kind of a training opportunity, or that holistic life cycle of employment here, I think was really, really cool, really future leaning, because in my experience it hasn't been quite as emphasized, we'll say, to the tune of what she's talking about, which I think is awesome. Along those same lines, the second aspect of maintaining talent, right? Because I think what folks, and I've seen this a few times actually throughout my career, is you get people who come in and they're really good at what they do. They hit the ground running and they go full bore day one, and then they burn out, right? And so then, you have to deal with that burnout and the idea of trying to make sure that they stay engaged, and trying to figure out the best way to do that. So I think training and re-engagement, and even if it is that whole managing to a different agency or to a different division, is so unique and profound. that I think a lot of people are like, and she mentioned it too, right? Like she gets a lot of pushback on it. But I think there's a wider range of folks that will actually adopt that mentality from a leadership perspective. And then the last thing is a bit of a cheat for me because I'm going to double down on exactly what you said. But those soft skills, right, where it's like, you know, those crucial conversations or, you know, praise and like even reviews in general at a leadership level in like remote work is hard. Because like, you know, and you and I both know this and kind of understand this, but like all of the nonverbal stuff that you don't get because you're only seeing like shoulders up, right? You know, like a fidget of a hand or like the pointing of a foot, like those could all interpret to something larger than what the person might be saying. And like I think those are kind of like the unforeseen victims of this remote workforce now, where it's like we can all communicate and talk, and like the whole state is essentially connected, but even still, there's still that canyon of emotional intelligence that we're not quite addressing through remote work, and I think that's going to be really crucial, for sure.
It's true. It's true. I mean, I talk with my hands. And, and it really is, it's a way of emphasizing. I'm also a pacer, which I've learned you cannot do in the meet environment. Even though I've got a very cool camera that will do it, it's really off-putting to people that are watching. But I struggle with it too, because I use my hands a lot in order to emphasize points and kind of get that. So I'm really, maybe I'm more curious than some others about how her and her team can kind of bridge that gap and really figure out some new ways of bringing soft skills into the new work environment. Hey, thank you so much for joining us again on Intentionally Left Blank, and looking forward to seeing you in the next one.
Cool. Yeah, like Brandon said, thanks so much for watching and hanging out with us again today. Thanks to Jessica again for giving up an hour of her time to chat with us about what she's working on. As always, if you like what you see, go ahead and throw your questions or comments down in the comments section below. You can always ask us stuff in the community of interest in the Public Sector Connect website, and we're more than happy to engage with you there. But until next time, we'll see you around. I'll leave out the part where you're like, oh no, I forgot.
I appreciate that.
But I mean, there is a blooper section, so don't count it totally out.
That's right. Hey, thank you so. Good Lord, I don't even know what that was. That wasn't even. It wasn't a salute, and it wasn't peace, and it wasn't even a hi. It was almost like a curveball. Thank you so much for joining us for another great conversation. I think Jessica brought home some really interesting points looking over the horizon. Why am I recapping it again?
Right, I'm throwing a curveball.
It's what happens after watching an opening week throughout the past 7 days.